guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you've been happy, amazing, and positive as always. If you're new, hello, my name is Aisha and I do a bunch of random videos on here. I was intending this to be a true crime channel, but it's kind of turned into everything random. But I will get back into true crime very, very soon. So before I get started on this video, guys, please don't forget to hit that like button, that subscribe button, and please comment if you wish. I've gone for a different vibe today, guys. Like, my eyeliner is pink with a little like design there. I don't know, tell me what you guys think about fun Aisha. Do you want fun Aisha or glam Aisha? Let me know. Okay, so today's video is going to be about Colleen Hoover's books. Oh my goodness, I could go on about her books forever. She's like one of the most famous authors on BookTok right now. If you're on TikTok, you would know Colleen Hoover is like the author at the moment. She creates a bunch of different books, like sad books, thrillers, and she's just such a great writer. You know how they say like some authors are underrated or overrated? She is rated perfectly. So I have a bunch of books here that I have read of hers. This one, Layla, if you've heard of it, I'm actually currently reading at the moment. I'm only about 60 pages in, so I can't really form a full opinion yet because I haven't read all of it, but so far so good. It's captured me and I need to know more, so I'm happy with this. It doesn't leave you feeling like, okay, this is boring or okay, it's too slow. It's actually got suspense from the very first page. So that's what I like. I love suspense books. I love a little thriller. I'm going to tell you about which books to read first out of these 5 if you are new to Colleen Hoover. Now, just remember, I've only read these 4 fully and about quarter of the way in with this one. There's so many other books, guys. Like she's literally got like, I think it's like 30 books. So don't just go by with what I'm saying. Watch more reviews, read more reviews, and then decide how you're going to start. I'm part of the Cohorts fan club on Facebook, and you know, there's always all these new books that I haven't even heard of hers that I want to read. I've also got Hopeless by her, which I think is part of a series, so I need to get the other 2 books as well. You guys know if you've seen any of my videos, I have already done a review on this, so definitely go check that one out before watching this video. This is the book that made her like famous. This is what I knew her from. I just saw it everywhere in the shops, and the cover is what captivated me because of the color. It just stood out from all the rest, and I'm like, oh, what is this? So I gravitated towards it, and then I heard it was a really good book, and it was very good. The 3 main books that I'm going to be talking about today is Reminders of Him, Ugly Love, and the famous Verity. I will leave down below a timestamp of when I talk about each book, just in case you don't want to know about the other books and you just want to get straight into, you know, one specific book. I'm going to start off with Ugly Love because that's what I read the first out of these 3. Out of these 5 books, I would say you should start off with Ugly Love. Ugly Love is a book that kind of slowly eases you in to Colleen Hoover's style of writing. It's kind of like a romance slash friends with benefits slash, you know, attraction, lust, all of these things in it. It's a good starter book, and it's one of those books that it's not like a thriller, but there are some really sad points to it, and it really grabs your emotions. It really tugs at your heart. You have to be patient with this book. You have to sort of get into the feeling of each chapter, each page, because I know that a lot of people did get quite bored because they kind of want to get straight to the point. This is not one of those books. If you want straight to the point, do not read Ugly Love first because it takes a while. It almost feels like you are the main character and you're falling for this guy called Miles Archer. Guys, so I actually read out the blurb initially, but then I decided to film this and actually explain to you what Ugly Love is about. So it's about this girl called Tate, and she moves in with her brother in his apartment. He's a pilot, so he's rarely ever home, so she's kind of got the place to herself. You know, she wants this kind of new chapter in her life, so she moves in with her brother. Across from her brother's apartment lives this guy called Miles Archer, and he's this cocky, arrogant, rude, just not a very nice guy. Turns out Tate's brother and Miles actually know each other. Obviously, they live in the same apartment building. It's weird because it seems like he doesn't like her and she's just kind of weirded out by him, but she's also weirdly attracted to him. So they sort of start this friends with benefits vibe, you know, if you catch my drift. So they both kind of, you know, gain this physical attraction with each other, and in order to get into this friends with benefits relationship, Miles asks Tate for 2 rules. Don't ask about the past and don't expect a future. So basically, just to not get any feelings involved. And she's just kind of like, you know what? I don't have time for a relationship. He doesn't want a relationship. So this is kind of like the perfect arrangement. However, as time goes on, feelings start getting involved. Tate realizes very quickly that Miles is just not a very nice person. He's very cold, he's very distant, he just seems to be kind of in his own world. He doesn't really smile much. He just seems very serious all the time. There's times where he just completely drifts away from her, doesn't treat her very well. And she kind of realizes, you know, he might be getting feelings too, but she's not entirely sure. And they kind of do this behind her brother's back because Miles doesn't want to upset her brother because they're friends. So he's like, look, let's not tell him. Let's just keep this between us. This is just our sort of secret. Miles kind of gives mixed signals to Tate and she gets really kind of annoyed about this, and she's just like, what the heck's going on? Because she really starts liking him. She finds herself really, you know, thinking about him a lot and that sort of thing. So it's basically when 2 worlds collide, but things are very complicated, and you soon realize why Miles is cold and distant and rude and arrogant. You soon realize circumstances has made him the way that he is. This book is like your best friend, Tate, is going through this thing and she's like sitting there telling you about it and you're just like, what? You give your best friend all the advice in the world, but they don't want to take it. So, you know, there's just so many ways that you can look at it. Each chapter goes back and forth between Tate and Miles. So it's not just Tate's story, it also shows Miles' story, and it's a lot in the past and the present. So it does switch between that quite a lot, and it gives you a full round perspective on each of their lives. It's heartwarming, it's heart-wrenching. I definitely cried in it. In the beginning, you're angry and you just feel like Tate needs to just move on. She's digging herself a hole and digging deeper and deeper. But as the story goes on, you realize there's a lot more to it. And you also start understanding Miles' perspective as well as the story goes on. You realize why the arrangement is the way that it is, why they are the way that they are, and you know, how things go from bad to worse to good to bad to all of everything in the middle. You get impatient, you get irritated, you're just like, come on, like really, is this really how you're gonna go about things? You're just sitting there like, how is she still with this guy? Like, what? This is a great starter book. I don't want to give any spoilers. This is not what this is about. I read It Ends With Us first, and I do think that this book is quite triggering. It can be quite confronting at times. So I do think this should be maybe the 3rd or 4th book that you read of hers, just while you're getting used to her other writing styles. Second book I'm going to talk about is Reminders of Him. This one is, I just finished this one recently before I started Layla. This one follows more of a storyline. It doesn't go too much between the past and the present. It really is just kind of like a consecutive story. So it's a lot easier to follow. This one, it took me a while to get into. There wasn't much of a plot. There was just one plot. It was a little bit predictable. I'm not gonna lie. There are parts of it that you don't predict at all. So that kind of throws a curveball in it. But this one is a lot more predictable than any of her other books that I've read. It is a really heartwarming story, and it really teaches you about forgiveness and how you shouldn't assume things when you don't know the facts. It's definitely a story that is very, very realistic, I must say. I believe that a lot of people go through a similar thing as the main character, Kenna. It is very sad, but it's also emotional and in a very happy, heartwarming way. This one would be a good second read. Some of the ways that she writes, you're just like, how does she think of this? It just grips at your soul. And you do notice she's got a very similar writing style to her other books. So some ways that she describes things is very similar to the other books that you've read. This is about a mother who goes to jail for 5 years because of a car accident that involved her and her boyfriend that resulted in him passing away. And at that time of the car accident, she didn't actually know, but she was pregnant and they were both drinking. She got behind the wheel and they got into a massive car accident that resulted in her ex-boyfriend's death, Scotty, and his family absolutely hates her. They blame her for the death of Scotty, and pretty much the whole town knows about this and is like, we hate you. You are not forgiven. So while she was in jail, she gives birth to her daughter, and her daughter is taken away and is being taken care of by Scotty's parents. When she gets out of jail, she basically just saves up money and goes to the town where her and Scotty were in this relationship and all of that. And she goes to try and get her daughter, to try and meet her daughter and just have her in her life. It all kind of starts very straight away. Like there's no sort of lead up. It just starts like that. She goes into this bar and she meets the owner of the bar, who is this really nice, good-looking guy, and basically all of these things unravel with this guy as well, and it's just kind of a shocking moment and all of that. All of it unravels basically in the first 2 or 3 chapters. It's very quick. This guy kind of becomes her support system. He is also a guy that is part of that small town, and he hated her also, but he slowly starts realizing that he's actually getting feelings for her. You do feel the isolation that Kenna, the main character, feels. You do feel her loneliness and her desperation to get her daughter back. Towards the end of the book, I definitely cried. I feel like I cry in every one of Colleen Hoover's books, but with this book, I had to be quite patient. So I'm letting you know, please be patient with this book because it's not an easy read. Now on to Verity, which I think has been my favorite book so far. Oh my goodness, when I tell you don't read this at night, don't make the mistake of reading this at night. I was petrified. I watch horror movies all the time. At least once a week, I will watch a horror movie, a thriller movie. Reading a thriller, however, is just beyond what you could even imagine because it's just so descriptive. With movies, you have the music to kind of guide you in when the big jump scare is going to happen or whatever. Books don't have music, so you don't know what's coming. So you're just basically reacting as you're reading each word. And that is this book. It is so suspenseful. I'm telling you, I tried to guess the plot maybe 15 different times. A lot of the times I was wrong. However, towards the ending is when I started sort of predicting, what was really happening. And I think that's how Colleen Hoover kind of meant for it to happen, is for you to go, like that light bulb moment. There is a bonus chapter of this book, and it's definitely, you have to read it. It's not in this one. I actually looked it up on YouTube because I only found out there was a bonus chapter when I searched this up on TikTok and realized there was a bonus chapter, and I was like, what? I have to get onto this right now. It will leave you torn. It's like you get the closure that you want, you get the answer that you want about what's going on. But then as the story continues, you're just like, well, now I don't even know what the hell to think. I'm telling you, it's like an open-ended book with closure. It's just the most bizarre thing to even describe. You've kind of got to decide at the end of the book what you think is the real truth. I have never felt more angry in a book than this one. The last time I felt angry in a book was It Ends With Us. I was completely just in rage reading this book. And then I read this book and I thought, goodness me, if I didn't think anything else could make me more angry, it's this. I just have to give a trigger warning though. It is not an easy read. Sometimes you just want to throw the book away because you're just like, I can't read anymore. It gives you plenty of warnings in the book. It's disgusting at some points, but it follows the storyline. I just don't even know how Colleen Hoover even thought of these things. Like I wonder if she actually had to really research and interview people that thought like this. In some parts of the books, you're just like, no way could a sane, normal person ever think this way. And you will completely know what I'm talking about once you read this book. Every time I went to bed after reading this book, my heart would physically hurt. You just think of so many different outcomes, so many different reasonings throughout this whole book to justify what is written in this, but really there's just no way. And right at the end is where you're like, oh my God. This book is about Lowen Ashley, who is sort of like not a very well-known writer. She hasn't gained the success that she would have hoped for. And she gets hired by Jeremy Crawford, who is the husband of a very famous, well-known writer called Verity Crawford. Verity gets into a nasty accident that basically leaves her paralyzed. She's like in a vegetative state and she can't obviously write anymore. So Jeremy hires this woman, Lowen, because she's got kind of a similar writing style to Verity, to finish the series that Verity was in the middle of writing, a very successful series. Lowen's like, what? Like, you're getting me to write Verity Crawford's books? Like, this is insane. So she goes to the Crawford's home to look through all of her notes, to research all of her notes, just to kind of get any piece of information that she can use for the next book in the series, just to help her write and get into the mind of Verity and what she was hoping for in the book, what she was thinking to write for the series. So while she's there, she pretty much takes over the study room where Verity would write her books and goes through all of these notes and pretty much everything that she can get her hands on. And she stays there for a little while. She's given like a bedroom. She makes herself at home and she comes across this manuscript. She's kind of like, oh, this could, you know, help me out with the book, get into the mind of Verity. But it is beyond anything that Lowen could have ever come across in her life, beyond what she could have even imagined. It's basically a biography, this manuscript, and she thinks, great, this will help me get into Verity's mind, like this will help me in, you know, her writing style and, you know, finishing off this series for her. As she's reading, she realizes it's not just any old biography. It is vicious, it is unbelievable, and shocking, to say the very least. She is pretty much petrified of what she's reading. She just can't believe what she's reading. And she realizes that Jeremy, Verity's husband, has no idea this manuscript even exists. And this manuscript was never intended to be read by anyone. It was almost like Verity's diary. You know, no one should ever even dream of reading someone else's diary. Lowen's like, oh my goodness, like, what do I do? What do I do in this situation, you know? So she's kind of torn, like, do I show Jeremy this manuscript and kind of betray a woman who's in a vegetative state for the rest of her life? Or do I just pretend like it doesn't exist? So there's that battle between all of that. And, you know, the family has been through a lot lot of tragedy, a lot of trauma. So does she want to add fuel to the fire? She doesn't know. You know, that's the debate. And it basically becomes a very haunting story. And in the manuscript, Lowen reads basically a lot of admissions that she knows that Jeremy has no idea about. And she's fearful. This manuscript makes her physically ill. And throughout this process, she kind of starts gaining this attraction for Jeremy. Jeremy is busy looking after his wife, Verity, you know, and she's like, this is bad. I should not be doing this, because she's living in the house. They spend a lot of time together and all of that stuff. And she starts kind of gaining this attraction for him. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most exciting books I've ever read. I would literally sleep at like 4 a.m. because I just needed to know more. And before you know it, I'm sleeping at 4 a.m. It's just a perfectly written story and leaves you completely torn. Honestly, I still don't have an answer. I still don't know what the conclusion is, because it is up to interpretation. I think this book needs to be made into a movie because it could be a very great thriller. I love a good thriller. And I'm just telling you right now, like, if you do get scared easily, just try and read this during the day when the sun's out. You know, make sure someone's at home or someone's around you, because it is quite scary at some points. This captured me from beginning to end. It wasn't like Reminders of Him where it took me a while to get into. I think read this one last because it is quite scary. So out of these 5, I would say read this one first, Ugly Love, then go ahead and read Reminders of Him. And then I would say next read It Ends With Us. Like I said, this is quite confronting. And then read Verity. If you go with this first, you're throwing yourself into the deep end. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. But if you want to ease your way into Colleen Hoover, I think this is the best order to do it from with these books. They're not part of any sort of series or anything like that. I'm not sure where Layla sits at the moment because I am still very new into it. So I guess I will decide after I finished it. I do really struggle to talk about these books without giving spoilers away because I want you guys to feel the full effect of it. I don't really know anyone else that reads Colleen Hoover like I do, so I can't really like talk to anyone else about it. So I might, you know, do some individual reviews so that, you know, we can talk about it if you've already read it. So that brings me to the end of this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that I described the books in somewhat of an understanding format. These books are definitely ones that I do recommend. If I was new to the Colleen Hoover world, I would read it in that order. I will let you know how I go with Layla, and maybe I will do a review straight after I've read it. When I finish one book, I start the next. And then when I start the next one, the one that I read before kind of fades away in my memory. So I do need to do the reviews as soon as possible. So I might do a quick summary read before I go in and do reviews. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed. Please stay happy, please stay amazing, please stay positive, and please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this video. Take care, guys. Bye.